Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, hear untold stories, and explore the brilliant minds behind some of the finest ambient music out there. I'm your host, Mike Graff. I'm excited to be in this together with you. Let's get going. Hey everyone, welcome again to the All Ambient podcast. This week's roundtable is a special one. Kirk Smith and Marshall Usinger, of course, joined the roundtable, but as our fourth member this week, Andy Robinson of Raphah sat in, and it was just a great time to be together with him, to hear his perspective, his wisdom. He's an absolutely brilliant artist and a great guy. The four of us really enjoyed chatting about what makes you stand out in the music world. And it went a couple different directions. I was very encouraged by it, but I think there's a lot of stuff that's encouraging and challenging, and it was just a great conversation. Let's not mince any more words. Let's get right into today's roundtable. Welcome to another episode of the All Ambient Roundtable, everyone. And this week we are joined, of course, by Marshall Usinger and Kirk Smith, but we have an incredible fourth with us this week, Mr. Andy Robinson of Raphah. Andy, welcome to the roundtable, man. So glad to have you with us.
Thanks, Mike. Great intro.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Did you catch the words of affirmation that Andy, that's a good example for, oh man, no, you're going to give me a big ego, Andy. No, without a doubt though, you are hardly a guest. You feel just as much a part of the family as the rest of us. And it really is an honor to be here together. But man, with all the great stuff that you've been working on and putting out and everything that's in the pipeline, I just feel like that there's some exciting stuff coming along. And yeah, I mean, we'll all share a little bit about what's going on, but we'll put you in the hot seat for a second since we don't get to see your face all that often. What's new, man? Anything, whether it's music stuff or just life stuff, what's new with you?
Well, there's loads of new stuff. Family life is crazy with 3 kids who keep me very occupied. Work is also busy. I think last time I spoke to you, I said I was studying for a master's degree, so that continues into year 2.
How close are you? Are you zeroing in?
No, I wish I was. It feels like I'm at the foot of the mountain. The summit is a long way off. I'm in year 2 of 4, so I've got a long way to go. But enjoying it and trying to fit it around everything else. And then there's the small matter of the music, which takes up the small amount of spare time I have. But absolutely loving that. There's loads of stuff teed up for next year. Yeah. I've already filled up loads of releases with other people, collabs and other projects. And as usual, I think like most of us, I have more ideas and inspiration than I have time for. But there's certainly lots to look forward to for next year.
Right. Well, that's a great problem to have, that the inspiration is outpacing the time to put to it. But here's hoping that you get even more time to put to it. But yeah, it's great, man. Well, really excited about everything that's going on. And your wall of guitars that are hanging behind you. I got to zoom in on the photo again, but we've got several basses and several. Is that a nylon string on the far side, or is that yet another acoustic, or man?
Yes,
the
one
calling it
far left, my left.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a nylon acoustic. That is, in fact, the first guitar I ever picked up and played. That used to be my mum's.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, that's what I've played my first G chord on and started that journey. And then I've got a mixture of acoustics and the bass in the far corner and my favorite Taylor behind me on the stand. So
there you go, man. All the stuff.
And whereabouts are you, Andy? If everyone can obviously hear his lovely voice. He's across the pond, I'm assuming, but I don't know that I quite know where exactly you are.
Yeah, so I'm in the UK. I'm providing the British accent in Ben's absence today.
That's right. We swap out one, get another.
Yeah.
On the other side of the globe from Ben, though. So yeah, I'm in England, near a town called Bedford. So
okay, cool.
Pretty much in the middle.
Okay. Awesome, man. I want to ask Andy this. Can we just jump in kind of thing?
Yeah, let's go.
Is that all right? Cool. Well, Mike, me and Andy just met virtually, I guess, face-to-face first time, right? I'm working on a rework for Sir Andy.
Sir Andy. There you go.
And I quite appreciate when I kind of dove into the audio files. I don't know, man. I really like the approach. I feel like you're doing a lot of stuff with real instruments. And there's a lot of the synth stuff that you're doing. There's a lot of not just the warbly kind of modulation stuff, but I feel like there's also kind of a lot of detuning stuff happening. Some of it sounds almost like it's just kind of in the moment of possibly while you're playing it, which I really quite like. So I don't know, man. I like how it's going so far. I'm just kind of curious if Is that an approach that you try to take with a lot of the stuff that you make, or is that kind of something you've honed in recently? Or I would love to just hear a tad about your creative process in general.
Yeah, great question. I mean, the creative process is constantly changing, constantly evolving. And I very much started out as a musician being a bit more classical, did grades, did piano, played the flute, played in orchestras and bands until I was about 15. Then I thought that's not cool anymore. Picked up a guitar, went the guitar route, was much more of a singer-songwriter. So the ambient thing's more of a recent development the last few years. So I always try and incorporate some real instruments. I love the warmth and the authenticity of something real, particularly guitar. So I always try and include something of that. And whether that's as it comes, as a pure recording, or whether I use that, sample it, stretch it, shift it pitch-wise, add effects, I always like to have that element in there because I think that adds something of me, some more warmth and depth to something which isn't necessarily just in the box as a synth. And then I like to blend that with different synth sounds as well. Now, when I first started ambient, I would use a lot of out-the-box patches and presets, and that was kind of my go-to. And that, in fact, although it was a great point to start, I felt was almost cheating a little bit because it wasn't me. I hadn't made the sound either with a physical instrument or by playing around. So I'm really enjoying at the moment just starting from scratch. And I'm slowly working my way through how to actually use synths. I bought myself a little synth so I can learn some more of that process. So I love taking a sound, changing it, molding it and shaping it. Sometimes you hit something straight away and you think, wow, that sounds great. Yeah. Other times you end up spending hours trying to hone and refine. And in the end, you think that sounds terrible. I'm going to delete what I've spent hours working on.
Yeah.
But it's all part of that. Friend. Yeah, it's all part of that process. And then just trying to blend them together into something that takes a listener on a journey and reflects what is on my heart for that particular track. And it might be that I'm using the sounds themselves as an inspiration to write something. It might be that I come at it with a particular theme in mind or something that I've been thinking about, particularly in terms of nature, which inspires me, or something else which I've kind of been thinking, meditating upon. So I don't really have a set process, but those are some of the elements that I try and draw into what I'm doing. And every day is a school day, constantly learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, man. Thanks for sharing that. Your sounds are very nice. So yeah, keep up the good experimentation, you know.
Thanks. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with them as well.
Yeah. I hope I am as well.
Andy Marshall does not dole out compliments very often, so please receive that with all sincerity.
I'm honored.
He's not blowing smoke, man. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of times he's said something nice to me or Kirk, or so you're getting the pristine treatment here. And rightfully so. You've earned it.
Yeah.
I'm going to need some bigger headphones with this head this size of the head.
I love that. Well, that's Marsh. You and me must be on the same wavelength in a sense, because I wanted to talk about kind of that very sort of thing. And I've got sort of a two-part question for today's roundtable. But the idea, like the first part of it, really, I've just been kind of noodling around it. And, all of us in this roundtable have songs on different playlists out there in the world and different, perhaps radio station, quote, in the air radio stations, on different streaming platforms and all that stuff. I love that whole avenue. I'm really grateful for the momentum, really grateful for everything that's happening there. But what I was starting to ask myself, like when I turned on one that several of us happen to be prominent on and listening to, is I was just listening through the bevy of other artists that are also on said station or playlist. And I started asking the question to myself, like, okay, so we're all in the same genre, if you will. And I know that there's a pretty wide variety within that genre, but we're all on, a playlist that is either designed to fit some particular end use, like a sleep aid or study aid or something, or maybe defined a little bit more by an emotion. Like this is something that's calm. This is something that's contemplative. This is something that's inspiring, kind of those sorts of things. And so the question that I'm asking myself and that I want to ask all of you guys is, in a sea of music beginning to really just add up to an amount that makes it just insurmountable to listen to everything and kind of parse it all out. There's tons of music that's constantly being composed or generated at this point. And the question I'm asking myself is, what makes me instantly recognizable in that sea of content? What makes what I do, what makes Dear Gravity stand out? And not in a like I have to stand out sort of way, but like what is the thumbprint that Kirk, that you are leaving on the space you're in, that Marshall, that you're leaving on the space you're in, that Andy, that you're leaving on the space you're in? I think the thing that's accelerating that question for me, and I'll just jaw for another second so you can start formulating your your answer in the back of your head. But like if we are getting closer to the point where someone can type in a prompt and there is an algorithm that will be able to design a replication of a particular ambient artist to a certain degree, it's never going to be, apples, but there's already such strong advances in that field. At one point, we have to start asking ourselves the question, like, what part of this artist journey am I doing? Like, what part of it am I doing because I am compelled to do this? Like I just have this desire that this thing needs to exist in the world. Like what part of it is the thing that just compels you to continue to put it out into the world? Not because that, like we need to just like create widgets, so that if songs were content, if songs were just, we need to just fill the earth with more and more of those. Because at this point, if you can just generate those with an algorithm, it certainly doesn't have to come from me. It can come from any source. Like what part of your artistry would you consider is pretty instantly recognizable, and maybe kind of along with that, like the thing that compels you to do what you do? And Kirk, you and I, we had a one-on-one recently where we were kind of talking a little bit about where this journey's going in the next, handful of years. And I know we were talking a lot about just the emotive part of it and drawing this emotion out of ourselves and hopefully passing that opportunity on to the listeners. And I do love that. So maybe I'm asking a little bit more on a, I don't know, instrumental or production or, compositional side. Like what makes you stand out? There we go. Mm-hmm. And there is no wrong answer. I would be curious if I were to give an answer, how on point or not on point you guys think I am. And then vice versa. I mean, we're just going to jaw on this for a little bit, but there we go. There's the question.
It's really hard to define, I would say. I think at the end of the day, the thing that makes us stand out as artists, it's our taste in a sense, and how our taste translates to people who share similar tastes. And I might try to use some bad analogies if I can get there or something, but it's like, everybody has the same ingredients to make something, to make a pie, to make the crust, to make the filling, to make the thing. And it's like, why is somebody else's pie better than somebody else's? It's like, well, how long they cook it, what the ratio of flour to water to eggs to time and the secret ingredient is love. And so, it's kind of mysterious really, to where you have a certain taste, you are creating in an avenue with a certain emotion, and you're not quite finished with a piece until you feel the satisfaction of the journey, of the sound, of how it ends, how it builds, the story, and even in the mixing where it's like, oh, there's this weird resonance that just bugs me. Like for me, if a synth or a thing is, I call it zingy. Like if it's too zingy, I don't like it. Or if it's too crystalline, I personally don't like that sound. But there are tons of people in the ambient world that make stuff like that either love it and it's gorgeous and I can appreciate it. But for me, it's too zingy. And so a lot of the stuff I do tends to be on the darker, one man's warm is another man's dull. Sure. Yep. And one man's bright, is another man's zingy. So I think what makes us stand out as artists is the way we present our tastes.
Right.
And I think the two ways we present our taste are in the sonic bright dark of the actual sounds, and then the actual notes that we choose. Yeah. So it's like, it's the sound design and then it's the composition. I can remember doing, this was years ago, studying a score of Eric Whitaker or Whitker, however you say his name. The song Sleep, you know that song Sleep? It's a vocal arrangement. Oh, dude, it just kills you. If you haven't ever listened to it, Eric Whitaker Sleep. And just these cluster chords of sixth and ninth chords and seconds with the third and the fourth at the same time and all these kind of like beautiful chords. And I remember studying the score and being like, these are my favorite chords. I want to make this song over and over again. And that's kind of what I've done in a lot of senses. I've used a lot of seconds and sixths and ninths and the third and the fourth happening at the same time, these suspended. So it's not really a suspended chord. It's a major chord with the fourth going on at the same time. Yeah. And there's something about just that combination of notes that I just really love. And so even I'll just keep doing it and it just keeps working. It's kind of like, this is my crust and I just like the way it tastes. And so I'm going to use it. Yeah. So I think when we lean into our taste and when we lean into our sonic choices and we lean into our note choices, that starts to culminate into our personality. Yeah. And then when we make something, we feel like it's a complete representation of that. I think that's kind of, for the most part, that's how we do it.
Well, and you took my stumbling through of a question, Kirk, and turned it into something that's, that is beautiful and like true. And all the things that my just like word vomiting just is not. Just hearing you talk about that, it just made me think of like, I could probably name it as could anyone here, like if you just think of like, well, and Andy, maybe, I don't know how many pizza places are all over Bedford, but just pizza jumped into my mind. The idea of like, I could probably name 20 different pizza places within, I would say, a radius of 20 or 30 miles from, right? And I'm sure there's hundreds of them, but I could name, however many of them. And could probably say, this one, like their pizza's kind of like this, and their pizza's kind of, sometimes it's about the crust, sometimes it's about the freshness of the ingredients, sometimes it's about the method that they use, like the wood fire versus, the Sicilian, just all the stuff. I'm a fan of a lot of it. Clearly, I'm a fan of a lot of it. It's one of those things where, there might be a restaurant or two that isn't necessarily getting a recipe right that people are like, oh, I enjoy this. Like, there might be a few restaurants that just don't do that. But for the most part, most restaurants have a palatable pizza that they're able to serve, their guests. And there are all those little nuances, something like the zing you were talking about, Kirk, a zing at one place that somebody really likes, like a pepper honey drizzle over the top of a pizza that might just be like everything to one person, but then to another person, there's like, that's not my thing at all. And I'm going to go down the street. That doesn't mean that it's a bad move. It just means that it is a move that's like, okay, I don't really resonate with that. And I think that's a great way, kind of what you were saying, to think about music in a sense, and whether it's within our genre or looking at like genre to genre. I mean, you kind of identified it, Kirk, how your flavor of what you do is, it's less crystalline than, perhaps other people in the same field. And yet that other thing is very cool for those people and for the people who listen to that. Yep. And I love that.
Absolutely.
So I guess to put you on the spot just for another like 30 seconds, Kirk, I would love to hear just a little bit more about like, are there thoughtful things in your recipe that you're like, I think this is what makes me stand out. Like the less crystalline of it is maybe part of it. And that's a tough question to ask. Like I get it, because it's not as though you can just throw those ingredients into a pan and make a We Dream of Eden song, because Kirk said, well, it's kind of like this, like it's going to be influenced grandly by the chef in all cases. But I just want to hit you for just another couple seconds. Like what else in that recipe of yours is the thing that you're like, I think that's what makes me stand out?
Yeah. Okay. I would say my basic ingredients are going to be dark, low mid pads that don't have a lot of brightness, mixed with clean sub type basses that have a lot of dynamic movement, but they're fairly clean and pure sounding as opposed to gritty. So I have you already have a very pure sonic thing going on with the low mids and the bass. And I do a lot of spread triads. So compositionally, I bring a lot of spread triads to the mix and kind of compose in spread triads, meaning if I was going to play a C chord, I'd play a C and a G in the left hand, and then I'd take the E major up the octave. And I just love the sound of that. You could do a spread triad with a filter cutoff and a volume knob, and like you're already halfway there with a good sound.
Yeah.
And then you take that shape and you compose with that spread triad. And then I like to just do sprinkly bits with usually the same type of process with some type of instrument, whether a live instrument or a sampled version of a live instrument. So like a live piano that is a plug-in of the day or the week that I'm into. But they all kind of sound the same, where they're these fairly dark, maybe feltish pianos. And I'll improvise typically with some type of pentatonic thing, because pentatonics, you can't go wrong. You can play all the notes all the time and it's never going to sound bad.
Right.
So then I'll improvise with pentatonic stuff, and then I'll resample it, mangle it. And that becomes my kind of chaos, random life that I interject into the composition.
I love
and
that.
then from there, I'll either go real melodic or I'll go real non-melodic, and then maybe add some noise. I think, Marsh, for the one that we're doing, I found this sound called veggies sizzling on the grill. And it was basically just the sound of vegetables frying on a grill. And I just pitched it down 2 octaves, rolled off the super high end, put warble on it, and then played it in chords with a, mod wheel to do the volume, and threw that into a delay and reverb, and so it's like, that's mostly how I build my thing. I got my clean sub, my low mid pads, my sprinkly bits, and then my veggies on top. Can just arrange, try to approach different ways of composing, the same 6 or 7 chords. And
I'm
it's
just imagining somebody who's listening to that
they're
veggie
like,
song
what?
And they're done with it, and subliminally they're like, man, I am just really hungry for stir fry right about now. Like,
grilled zucchinis
I don't know
sound
what
amazing.
it is, but man, just subliminally planting. That's brilliant. Well, I love that, Kirk. And that's, again, like, even with those individual ingredients, right? Like I think of the fact that if we're going back to the, the cooking analogy, that I have most of the ingredients in my pantry that just about every like Michelin star chef has. Maybe not to the degree of like, they're using, imported stuff or certain levels of quality that maybe my flour is not that, or maybe my whatever. But like in a broader sense, a lot of the ingredients are the same, and yet they're able to create these masterpiece dishes out of a lot of those. And so, and I am not, that is not the part of my skill set. It is not, and that is okay. It is for Marshall, and maybe there's other people hiding in our field who enjoy the world of cooking and crafting and all that. We should start a sub thread on all that.
Sub podcast.
Yeah. But I think the idea behind that, though, is that it really does come down to the chef. And I think that's maybe just a vote of support in the world of ever increasing generative stuff, is that there will, like, even with all the data that one could feed, something that's going to generate something, it's not going to be the evolved version of you. Like even if one gave it all the stuff about you up until yesterday, like, you're still turning into a new person today. You are evolving as an artist today, beyond where you were at yesterday. And so I just, it's all about the chef. It really is. I love that.
Yeah, it's good. He doesn't like the foghorn samples I send him either. He said I was a little too crystally for him on the track we're working on. So I was kind of bummed about that.
Veggies.
Yeah.
We definitely need to start exploring the subgenre of veg ambient, though. I think there's something there.
It's vegan ambient.
Oh, vegambient. Oh man.
Oh boy.
That's like just on the edge of a dad joke, so I should probably back off. But
you're there. It's okay though.
Just stick the landing, like, you're there. Oh man. Well, Marsh, how about you? Andy, I know you already shared a little bit at the top, but please feel free to jump in on this, and just curious about what's that instantly recognizable thing? What is that thing about you?
Well, this is tough as I've been sitting here thinking about this, right? Because it's like I think probably all of us feel a little bit awkward saying the things we feel that we're good at when we're trying to make music, or the things that make us stand out. And I feel like this is just I love everything that Kirk touched on, and I think on that last bit there's stuff about each of you guys that I could probably answer the question, right? The stuff that stands out to me. But in the kind of digital landscape, I feel like it's very, what would make someone go, oh, that's definitely Dear Gravity. It's not a AI, generated Dear Gravity track. I think for me, my hope would be that, similar to what Andy touched on, would be that my stuff can be noticed with, or recognized, I guess, with a human element to it. And I think that could be anything from, maybe there's like a lingering hum you have from like a synth, but it's so very low in the track, but it wouldn't be anything that was ever on something that was completely made digitally or, by AI or something. And this is again where I can't, like, it's so hard to think of just what kind of stuff is going to be coming out of, this AI thing. But someone reached out to me the other day, and just a very kind message, and said that they really liked about my stuff, that they felt like there was a warmth, and they just called it like a luscious quality that they kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about some stuff that I use and things like that. But I would say for warmth specifically, I do try to I know we all do this to a degree, and I'm not saying, of course, that I maybe do it any more than you guys do, but I know that me making a song or an album, like with the mood pedal, like some people might know, I made this album called Moods, and I mostly used the Chase Bliss mood pedal to just like record loops into it and just record it that way. I know that to me, that sounds very much warmer than plugging in a patch on Omnisphere and writing an ambient piece that way, which a lot of people do very well. So I know we're not knocking any of that either, but that would be kind of the sound that I hope to be recognized for, would be to just feel that, okay, there's some humanity and emotion and real things being put into this that is translating on almost like a subconscious level, right? Like, you might not even initially pick it out, but you just get that sense of it. So I think that's the best I could sum it up for me, at least in the ambient landscape. It might be different when it comes to like more compositional stuff, but I think that's kind of where I would love to be, recognized for those kind of qualities.
Love it. And to affirm what the message that person sent you, luscious is definitely one of the first words that comes to mind when I think of you two.
Luscious. Not just my music, right, guys?
I didn't say music, man.
And thank you.
I think too, Marsh, just like that idea of building loops and then kind of seeing where they go and affecting them. I think the human touch is it's the imperfection, and like as loops come back around, maybe you didn't even do it to any kind of time. And so then as it cycles, it's like, it's going in and out of time with these other parts that are looping. And it's like, I don't think that type of feel at this point is going to be in algorithmically created things, because there's so much imperfection and chaos. Even if it's subtle enough to be perceived, but I feel like everything is going to be, for the most part, too balanced and too nice and too like perfect, even if it's trying to be like pitch warbled. I just feel like the whole approaching these loops with kind of a playfulness and curiosity is going to create these random human things. And then you're kind of curating it, after you've made all these things. Now you're kind of curating these things and then putting them in a sequence. I do feel like that kind of little extra effort, labor, but then also like not overthinking at the same time. You're adding all of this. It adds up to the human touch of it.
Yeah.
And I get that for sure from your stuff.
It'll be interesting to see if kind of, just to that point of like, do something like AI music platforms, start trying to create things that come across as imperfect, or, things that give it a more human touch. I don't know. That's maybe a whole nother thing, but I think, I can probably confidently say all of our hope would be that there is, and most likely will be, just that more noticeable human quality about stuff that I don't know that stuff will be able to replicate,
Yeah. I think I would agree with that. And in addition to what I said about including that human touch, so me playing my guitar, only I possess my fingers, only I possess that particular guitar with those strings, and played in this room, recorded on this mic in that particular way. That's something I always try and include. But in addition to that, picking up on what Kirk said, trying to add layers which are almost imperceptible, but I know they're there, and they add to the richness and texture of that particular piece, almost like a fingerprint or a bit of a signature within that piece where the listener might not even realize they're hearing it, but they are. And I think part of it is also trusting the listener and trusting that human connection, where even if they don't realize what they're hearing, that human fine-tuned ear can pick up on something that connects with them. And that to me is the beauty of making music, is writing something, releasing it, and someone else, the other side of the world, connecting with it in kind of a deeper way than just thinking, oh, that's a piece of music. So yeah, again, my hope would be, despite the rapidly changing nature of AI and the fact that it's producing things that are very good, it's never going to replace that human touch and that care that we take.
Yep.
I wonder if there's a kind of analogy here about where we could maybe talk about the circle of life, if you will, about like the appreciation of vinyl and how that sort of started in its own cycle. And we went to this world of completely digital consumable stuff that was immediately accessible. We could put on, sounds super clean, right? Clean pop production, whatever it is across the spectrum, like style wise. But you know, the recent decade or however long it's been with the appreciation of vinyl coming back and being something that people feel connected to. Yeah. I just feel like those elements of being able to hold something, the art, the aesthetic of it, the sound of a vinyl record coming through these speakers, that is not perfection. I kind of feel like there's some similarities there between, you know, these elements of people making music that are always going to be something that can be appreciated in a different way than something that is just completely, you know, digital. And so, I mean, immediately created essentially is, you know, how it will be happening. So I don't know, it just kind of makes me think of a cool comparison there about how that, it kind of seems like that stuff that stands the test of time kind of eventually circles back, you know, across like many art forms, I'm sure too.
Yeah, I mean, I think my quick 2 cents on that is that I think just we as humans, we like those imperfections a lot because I think it's like a mirror, right? Like it's a reflection back on us of like this human made something that another human is now listening to. Like just some of the grit, some of the, like a good comparison would be, you know, there's some big action movie out there that's just got CGI all over the place and it's all crystalline. We'll go with that word, Kirk. But you just, everything's just so vivid and so, and like it's literally unreal because it's all just been generated. And then you go see something that's shot on, like, you know, like a Tarantino movie, like him or hate him, like that he's using actual film and that he's doing a lot of the stuff is like real time, like practical effects. And just there's just a different layer of nuance baked into that approach versus something that's, you know, very, very, very crystalline. And I think we just resonate with what is real, if that makes sense. That doesn't mean that we don't appreciate to some degree, right, the other things, but I think we maybe hold in higher regard the things that, you know, just kind of the wonder of what another human is able to make. Like far be it from the day where you walk into an art institute and every piece in the place is some sculpture or something that was just generated by an algorithm. And like, it doesn't mean that you don't appreciate the coolness of it, but like, I want to see a human do that. I want to see, you know, someone put their hand to, whether it's a sculpture or to a canvas or whatever. And yeah, so I think that was more than 2 cents. It was probably 50 cents. But I think that's just kind of my gut reaction.
It was 50 cents.
So my 50 cents on that is that I think we just inherit, whether we realize it or not, we just like what feels human. And yeah. And that's,
love it.
That's not a bad thing because we are that particular species. And I like that species. It's a good one.
Yes.
Man, love everyone. I feel like we could jaw on this for a long time. I don't know if I even need to add anything because you guys are all just so brilliant. But I think just maybe to tie a bow on it all, unless someone else has something really great to add to it. I think that there is just a lot of beauty in us bringing kind of what everyone, you know, all the different individual elements that everyone said around the table here. But ultimately, you are creating, you know, what resonates with you. There is no one else with your brain. There is no one else with your know-how. There's no one else with your particular room, with your particular instruments, with your particular lean towards melodic, towards pentatonic, towards whatever. You're literally creating something out of nothing every time that you approach the canvas, if you will. And so just what a joy and wonder that is, because something cool is going to happen whenever you decide to show up for that. So keep on showing up, all ya, and for anyone listening, keep on showing up in what you are called to as well. So man, you guys are brilliant. This is like a masterclass in how to make good things. I love it. Thanks so much for dialoguing. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
I know, Mike.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Good stuff.
Thank you for listening to the All Ambient podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you can catch every conversation we have with all these incredible people who share the same passion. I'm looking forward to the next time, and I hope you are too. Can't wait to see you then, and until then, have an incredible day. Here's hoping this music and the heart behind it makes your day and life that much better. We'll see you next time.